So I just finished watching I Do Until I Don't with my wife, and that was a pretty brutal experience that she did not enjoy very much. It did make us laugh, though, so let's talk about it. I Do Until I Don't tells the story of three couples being interviewed for a documentary on how marriage as a lifelong commitment doesn't work. Throughout the movie, we get to see the ins and outs of their marriages and relationships, what works, what doesn't work. We can criticize their marriages, we celebrate their marriages in a movie that's a comedy that has some really deep, painful emotions, and that has a very unclear message as to what it's trying to say about marriage. Overall, my wife and I talked about this movie for a long time after it ended, even just trying to figure out what we thought about it and what the movie was trying to say about different things. So certainly this movie did make us talk about it, but I'm not quite sure that either one of us really liked it at all. So let's go ahead and start talking about the positive. The best thing about this movie is it's really good at times at absolutely capturing the real nature of how awkward marriage and sex lives can be, and just portraying it on screen in a way that feels so much truer than the vast majority of what you see in movies. So there'll be these sequences that are painful to watch, whether because it's a marriage and their struggles, or kind of when they're being interviewed and it's kind of like a counseling session and you're just watching it and the dialogue back and forth, and it rings so true that it's a painful and uncomfortable to watch. But that's to say that it accurately represents the human experience. And sometimes that can be one of the best things to say about a script dialogue, is that it actually rings true. And that's what this movie captures absolutely best at times. Not all of it, we'll get into that. But at times it's so true to real life in its exploration of marriage in certain regards. And some of the characters in it, some of the performances, they present people very true to life in ways that you see their flaws and kind of a little hint of their nastiness, while they're still fun and charming. And so Ed Helms I've maybe never liked him more than I liked him in this, and it's not that he was great. I'm not a big Ed Helms fan, but he felt like a guy you would know that's been making some bad choices, but not horrible choices, and you can see how it's gotten his marriage into a bit of a rut. And Paul Reiser is probably the standout in the movie. He's the most likable, at least for me, and at the same time has his flaws in it, but there's a charm to him. So those are my positives. Let's move on to the negatives, and unfortunately there's probably a lot more negatives here than positives. My wife and I really did talk about the movie for about an hour after we watched it, and the problem in even trying to critique it is that we wasn't quite sure which parts we didn't like because it just rang so true and it was just uncomfortable and unpleasant to watch, which parts we didn't like because it didn't like the message and the worldview and the thoughts on marriage that were in the film, and then which parts were the movie has some clunky bad storytelling. And so the way this story's kind of told is the documentary lady that's making the documentary that's kind of the inciting incident of the movie, the premise of hers is that marriage doesn't work. It should be a 7-year contract that you can renew after 7 years. And so then the idea of the movie that's being explored is, does marriage work? Is this conventional thing that we've just assumed that we need to have, that you have to have a marriage to have kids to raise them? Are all these conventions wrong, and we need to throw all that out and re-explore everything? That's the question of the movie. And the problem is the movie is also at the same time very interested in showing non-conventional relationships and not the conventions being deconstructed by the question of the movie. Which is to say, the most common family structure, the traditional family, the atomic family, is married couple with kids. And that's not in the movie. You've got the married couple that doesn't have kids, and one of them maybe doesn't want to have kids, and so you've got that. You've got an older couple, been remarried a couple times, and there's some dysfunction and distance with the kids. And then there's a couple that's not married, they've been together a number of years, and they're in an open relationship, and they do have a kid. And then there's another person that's having a kid in the movie outside of wedlock. And so a bunch of things that just, they're not the convention of marriage. They're not the traditional thing. But the movie is trying to explore the convention. That's a weird thing to do, and it doesn't seem like it has the right ingredients to do that. In all of this, the way it unfolds makes for a movie that has a very confusing message, because established in the first 10 minutes of it is this idea of, should marriage just be a 7-year contract? The movie then builds a case for about an hour. Yeah, marriage should just be a 7-year contract. Marriage doesn't work. And it keeps pointing to, look, hey, the people in the open relationship, they're happy. The people in these conventional marriages, they're really unhappy. And it keeps doing things like that. But then the last half of the movie kind of takes things in a different direction and sends a different message. And so as you're watching it, the first half's like getting punched in the gut, especially if you're married and kind of, I think, traditional views on marriages and families type things. There's value in that. Certainly, I'm married and have kids, so I think it's a good thing. And a movie that's saying, no, that's not good, that's not good, and then kind of goes in a different direction. You're like, wait, how am I supposed to feel about this? My wife described it this way. It's like I just got ran over by a truck and I'm asking for help, and instead of giving me help, the person just kind of handed me a sticker. That's what the second half of this movie felt like. And I got the sticker and I kind of felt a little bit better, but I was still just run over by a truck. And that kind of describes the emotional journey of the film, because it's so brutal in its view of marriage and then tries to have some happiness in the second half of it. And so I don't know what the movie was trying to say. I don't know where I was supposed to end up on any of this. And once again, compounding all the confusion is, while there's these moments in the movie that are so true and ring so much to actual things that happen in marriages and in relationships, they're followed up immediately by these scenarios that are just so outlandish and kooky. So there's like the free thinker couple in an open relationship, and they're like caricatures. They're like cartoon characters. There's only like a couple moments in the movie where they feel like they become grounded humans again. And then likewise, the documentary lady is so far out in left field and over the top in her behavior that she just feels like a cartoon character, a caricature, as opposed to a real person doing this exploration and this study. And those two things don't go together when you have these real, it's like so realistic moments followed by just cuckoo-ness. It's confusing and odd. And the whole movie plays out like that very real scenario in a marriage that where there's a miscommunication and someone's afraid to say what they're really thinking, followed by that person doing something unbelievably ridiculous that would never happen to try and solve the problem, involving a massage parlor. Once you see the movie, it's just so over the top where things go so quickly over just a little miscommunication that you just can't buy into the story. The tone seems off. All the elements doesn't quite all come together. So overall, a movie I can't imagine rewatching because it was really unpleasant to sit through the first time. And while there's some good performances, some very well-crafted moments in it, and some funny jokes, the overall experience and message were very unpleasant to watch. Overall, I think I'm going to have to go with a 4.5 out of 10 on this one. It just didn't come together. I didn't feel like I even understood the worldview, the idea on marriage they were trying to present. I felt more confused afterwards while kind of getting dragged through this very unpleasant experience. And if I'm being honest, this one is, I can't really recommend it to anyone on any particular level, even though there's some things in it that are mildly redeeming at times. Anyway, that's my take on it. How about you? What did you think about it? Tell me below in the comment section. I'd love to hear your thoughts on it because, if you've been on my channel, you know I'm an evangelical Christian, used to be a pastor, so I could probably have some pretty traditional views on marriage, so a movie that explores non-traditional views on them, I might be very biased in my perspective. I would be very open to someone else coming from a different background, giving your thoughts on it, and how much, my just background sways my opinion on the film. So I'd love to have a great discussion with you down below in the comment section. If you're new to my channel, please consider clicking that subscribe button. I do movie reviews, ranking videos, some TV reviews, but the key thing is I don't want to just talk about movies, I want to talk about movies with you. So join me in the comment section. Please consider clicking that subscribe button, and thank you for watching.